Hello, crypto community. Jeff Kirdeikis here with Zachary Dash, the founder of Bomb Token, and Mark Anstead, head of business development of Hydro. This is the very first time that we have done a live stream to the CI group with 3 people. So this is a super exploratory call here. The reason why we decided to do it this way is Mark and I were going to jam on a live stream here. And then I realized, the part about Hydro is a super interesting project. But what I really love about it is the way that it was structured and how it's really, they didn't do an ICO. They kind of, their funding and value came from the community. And so obviously that got me thinking. I'm like, well, our buddy Dash, and so all 3 of us are mods in the group here. I'm like, well, we should just all jam together and chat about what's going on. So glad to have you guys on the stream.
Yeah, for sure.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the intro. And just quick context, I didn't even know Hydro's journey of, getting to this far without the traditional funding. So I'm going to learn a lot as well from like what you guys did and how you did it,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a wild journey. It's been about 1.5 years now. And I mean, I support anybody that's going on the route where they're not going and getting VC funding or going the ICO route, because I sort of see that as an easy out for a lot of different organizations who just really have a white paper and an idea, especially in today's day and age. Because, I mean, if you're going to get any type of funding at some point in the future, whether you plan to or not, it's kind of crazy to think about you're raising millions and millions of dollars with just an idea. And yeah, so.
And I totally agree. It's like, in 2017, we saw people making millions of dollars off a promise. And the way that, Uptrend, Hydro, Bomb have all been structured is we're not giving a promise, but you're creating value first. And then the market dictates, what is that inherent value? And I think that's so much more, it's a trustless system, very similar to like how Bitcoin is like its ethos. Like, it's like, we're not taking your money and then building something. We're building something, and then you assign, what value it has.
Sure. I think one interesting kind of way to get into this conversation that's interesting to me is kind of the history of how this has evolved and got to this point. So, of course, you have Bitcoin, which didn't have an ICO. I kind of joke with the first ICO of Bitcoin was probably, somebody, buying pizza or whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
Bitcoin, the most successful one of all cryptocurrency currently to date, didn't have an ICO, which kind of proves that you don't need to raise a bunch of money to be successful. So then it started, I wrote a blog post a while back on like all the other people that have attempted to do this. And the other one that comes to mind is Nano, who actually did a faucet system. So you could actually go through and hit this CAPTCHA and it would actually give you Nano. And so they didn't do the ICO route. And the really interesting part to that whole story is the only people that were, willing to spend all day clicking this thing to get Nano whenever it was worth, 0.00001 cents, whatever it would be, were kind of third world countries to where the people getting them, it was actually, giving them a few dollars a day that they could use. And then when Nano went up to $24, if you can imagine, you're from the third world country and you all of a sudden see this thing grow up. So anyways, Nano is another one. I think there's a few other, do you guys know of any other cryptocurrencies like that are big that have done it successfully?
I know Digibyte has. I'm a pretty big advocate of what they've been doing. I know Florin Coin, which is now, I guess, renamed to Flow Blockchain. What they're doing with OIP and the Open Index Protocol, I think that's really, really cool. They're another basically no ICO project. What's the new security tokenization platform? Is it Raven?
Ravencoin.
Ravencoin, yeah, they're another no ICO project. And yeah, they're slowly starting to become more and more of them. And for me personally, like I really, really respect the rigor and the passion that it takes to do all of this stuff behind the scenes, because a lot of these people just see what's going on the outward side of things. When you're creating these types of projects, you're literally creating an entire company for the most part. And it is a ton of work behind the scenes. And I know Jeff and Dash can probably attest to that. And it's not easy having to go and do all of this stuff, basically funding it for the most part out of your own pocket.
Yeah, and you were mentioning before how you're talking about VC funding and how either that makes it easier for people, but I also feel that that's really scary for people, especially if you're just kind of like in the everyday Joe world. That's a whole sector that you don't even have the contacts. You don't even have like a second chain contact to a lot of VC funds. And it can be super intimidating for people starting these new businesses. Just because A, they don't have funding, B, they don't have contacts, C, they don't have the knowledge and know-how. And I think it's very interesting to kind of look at how, the three of our projects were structured and rolled out to kind of give people an opportunity to empower themselves, to kind of learn from our experiences and see, okay, well, how can I take this knowledge in these use cases and then implement it in my own life? And so I'd love to just kind of have like a 1 or 2 minute overview from each of you guys, just kind of filling people in on, what was the journey? How did it happen? And how were you guys able to even create a sustainable company? For Hydro and Bomb now, both of them worth well over $5 million. What's the market cap on Hydro now? I forget.
Somewhere around, I think it's 10.
Yeah. And so you're creating tons of value into this ecosystem, and that's even just for utility tokens. So it's not even in the equity of the platform itself. So yeah, Mark, maybe you start us off. Like, what was the journey for Hydro, and maybe just give like an overview on like, what it is, what value is it bringing, and then how did that roll into, people saying, yes, this token has value and being able to sustain a business?
For sure. So the project basically started by a fintech company out in New York City called Hydrogen Platform. They're a company who are now building modular enterprise-grade APIs on top of our protocols. And at that time, they basically looked at what was going on in the industry back in late 2017, early 2018, which was really the big boom in terms of cryptocurrencies as a whole. There were ICOs literally left and right. And they looked at it and they were like, this isn't really something that we want to do. They were talking with a lot of their legal advisors, and we're basically saying you probably don't want to go down the fundraising route in terms of like a token creation or token generation event. And so instead of doing that, they did an airdrop of 222,222 Hydro tokens to about 12,000 verified developers around the world. So in order to basically participate in this airdrop event, they had to have a verified GitHub account through the APIs, and basically went through and verified all of these people, which thankfully I didn't have to be a part of and do that distribution, because I know it was a pain in the butt.
Yeah. So you guys essentially like nailed in a target demographic right off the hop and just said, these are the people that we want in our community. Let's give them the tokens, give them like this utility, and see what they feel about it. And because Hydro essentially is building, it's such a diverse platform. Like, we're building 1,000 things and we need a bunch of developers. So it's like, let's airdrop this stuff out to the people that we actually need.
For the most part, yeah, we're just trying to build all of the different tools and I guess different types of technologies that are required to build the entire DeFi ecosystem. Because that's basically what we're building, which is a global decentralized economy. And we're really trying to enable for developers or any type of company or corporations to be able to go and build, whether it's an application, decentralized application, or even different types of modular enterprise grade APIs, completely for free. And that's the beauty of being open source, and obviously this entire ecosystem that we're all building as a whole, whether it's Hydro or literally any other project. I love the open source initiative. It's massive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I'll add on to that, and quick context for Bomb. In 2018 I worked at a marketing agency, and it was a multi-million-dollar marketing agency that was focused on blockchain specific. And through that time, I would say 80 to 90% of our clients were cryptocurrency, pre-ICO companies. So in other words, these companies are paying thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to launch an ICO to hopefully one day gain money. And it shows you how backwards this whole system is, to where we're not only wasting resources on building things that people don't want, but we're wasting actual money on potential money. And so kind of the current structure of an ICO that's so backwards to me, I'm not saying it can't work, but why it's backwards to me is you raise a bunch of money that you may or may not work, then you build for 2 or 3 years, and then after building it 2 or 3 years, then you go to market and you realize, okay, the people actually want this or not. So like Cardano, I have a lot of hope for and respect for what they're building. They're doing it seems like as bad of like a high quality as you can, but we still don't really know, are they actually going to do it? So in theory, this could turn into 3 years from now and we don't see anything but vaporware come up. Again, I'm not saying I don't think that that'll happen, but it could happen. On the opposite side of what Hydro is able to do and what we were able to do with Bomb is, like you mentioned before, you get the idea out into the world as quickly as possible, and you don't set an ICO price, or you don't say this token is worth X amount of dollars. You kind of let the market decide that. And in theory, if the idea is good enough, overnight you've launched a company. So another benefit of doing it like Hydro did is it mutually aligns what you're building with what people actually want. So whenever you've raised a bunch of ICO funds, you don't have to build necessarily what the market wants, because you've already like cashed in, if you will. You've already been financially incentivized. But with Hydro, with Uptrend, with Bomb, X, and what we're doing, we're all incentivized to build what our community actually wants from us, because we still have that stake with them, if that makes sense. So I agree with that completely. Last point also Mark made before the chat that's really good. It's kind of interesting that whenever I reach out and I talk to people that we didn't have an ICO, it's either goes really good or really bad, to where they say, why didn't, like, are you not serious about this? Or the other way is like, wow, that's amazing. You were able to accomplish this without any money. And so I think it's so backwards in the traditional world. If you were to go and say, I build $1 million company, it's not blockchain, but if I were to build $1 million shoe company without any funding, they're gonna be like, whoa, that means there's a real market here. That means there's a real demand for it. And it's immediately, oh, you're an amazing entrepreneur. You're amazing at this. In the crypto world, it's kind of like the ICO has become a screening for your validity, when we know that that's not the case. ICO is more about how much marketing dollars can you put into this. And so, yeah, I'll take a pause here, but that's kind of my thoughts.
No, I fully agree on so many levels with that. It's like these ICOs, it's just like how much hype can we generate is how valid is our project going to be in the future. And it's like, well, they really don't go hand in hand. For sure, marketing is half of a business. But if you have great marketing, it doesn't mean your project is going to be any good. And so it is, like you say, it's super backwards. And, when you look at the upsides of doing these kinds of distributions, you're building a massive community right out of the gate for essentially free. How Hydro did it, as Mark was saying, it's like all you have to do is target who do you want to airdrop to. And now you can engage a community that you're really interested in. It's like free Facebook ads. And I think the only downside that I feel people just kind of get short-sighted on is that they think, okay, well, if I'm doing this airdrop, then I need to wait for my token to have value so that I can then sell to cover my business expenses. And so this like little bit of impatience on, like a maybe 2, 3, maybe 1 year scale just really limits them in their perspective on how to or do different styles of raises and pigeonholes their ideals.
Yeah, no, that's definitely an understatement. And I've actually had a bunch of different conversations. One was last month with this organization. They actually bought out this entire cryptocurrency project for like a couple $1 million, and mostly just to buy all the code and the GitHub and whatnot. But it was basically a failed ICO. So what happened, I don't want to basically say who it was, but they raised a few $1 million and they were basically bankrupt within a 1.5 years. So in 18 months, they ran through all of the money that they had completely, and even all of the tokens that the team held as well. So they basically went out and partied and basically enjoyed themselves for 1.5 years. And that's one of the biggest concerns that you basically have to face, especially when you're a retail investor and working, looking for different projects to basically invest in, because you're not really investing in equity with a lot of these people in the cryptocurrency industry. You're basically investing in what's called a utility token. I know Jeff is very interested in like the security token aspect, and I am as well. And like that's the big misconception I think in this space when people are going and taking part in a lot of these different projects, because they think that they're going and buying in these ICOs or IEOs, that they're basically buying shares or equity in these companies when they're not. And I mean, we've seen it with a couple projects who've basically had a bunch of different promises in their white papers, obviously haven't basically gone through with what they did to create real utility and use of a token, because that's how you basically provide value to it. And if you're not going and doing that, then obviously the token is irrelevant. And that's where I guess we get the big term of shit coins, or if you're French, you can call them shitcoin. Yeah, it's one of the biggest issues, because you're able to basically raise money without having to give up any equity in your company, which if you're an entrepreneur and you're very business savvy, that's a really, really easy way for you as a business person to make money, because you don't have to give up any equity whatsoever, and you can already jumpstart development and funding. And then maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you can be like, all right, I'm going to look into doing like a Series A, Series B, maybe like some seed funding. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions and issues that we're actually experiencing right now in this whole industry.
Yeah, I agree. I want to add on to what you just said there. And the best way that I can explain utility to my friends and people outside of crypto on how it's not equity is I really use the example of Chuck E. Cheese. I'm not sure if you have Chuck E. Cheese where you guys grew up, but the little pizza place where you have tokens and they're worth 25 cents and you can put them in there. So imagine if somebody came to you and they're like, listen here, I'm going to create the competitor to Chuck E. Cheese, and instead of Chuck E. Cheese, it's going to be, I don't know, Jonathan Cheese. I don't know. I'm just going to make up something. But the point is, they create these Jonathan Cheese tokens that are going to be used for games. So they're not going to give you any equity in the Jonathan, enterprise that he's creating, but it'll give you tokens that you can play games on. And so, these tokens, he then takes them and then uses it to fund the entire project. And eventually, so unless you understand how that token is being used within this new Chuck E. Cheese, that's what could or could not give it some potential value. And I actually do think tokenomics, I'm very passionate about. If you do set up the right tokenomic system on, like, so for example, I keep using Chuck E. Cheese, but they're tied to 25 cents. Like, there's no way that they can appreciate or depreciate. They're tied to 25 cents. But what if there was a scarce amount of them, or what if the games that you were able to get on tokens, instead of Chuck E. Cheese giving them to you, you had to buy them on eBay? Now suddenly there's some dynamics going on between the tokens, the scarcity, all this other thing. So I do agree with you that tokens, there's a huge misconception with like utility versus equity. I do, and we can get into the whole, maybe this is for another conversation, the whole altcoin season, like, is it coming or is it not? But I do think there is, and this is what we're doing with BOMX, we still truly believe in the utility tokens. We still think that there will be a place for them in the ecosystem. I just don't think that people have connected the dots on how to make them work without having too much downward pressure on the price over a long period of time.
Yeah, and I think that's perfectly said. And I think in the term utility token, it's baked right into the word utility. And you look at Chuck E. Cheese, it's like, well, what is its utility? Its utility is a payment system. It's like, well, is that payment system even necessary? Like, could we not just use US dollars? And so it's like, well, their utility is getting you to like just invest a bunch so that your investment is locked into playing these games. And I think you see that a lot with different projects in the utility token space, where it's like, well, what's your token used for? Oh, it's for buying merchandise on our e-commerce platform. It's like, well, why wouldn't I just use Ethereum? Yeah. Oh, well, we'll give you a 10% discount. It's like, listen, man, I'm not going to Mercatox, opening an account, doing KYC, withdrawing, depositing, and trading just so I can get a 10% discount. And I think that's where a lot of these projects kind of get a blinders on, being like, oh, it's a great utility. And it's interesting, like with BOMX, you guys are really focusing on launching different projects who have these kinds of tokens. So in your eyes, what do you feel is like a valid, maybe this is a broad question, but a valid style of utility token or something that can introduce value into the ecosystem?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think we're still trying to explore that as an industry. And you're kind of right. The one utility that you see people do is like the BitTorrent model, where it's like they're just using these BTT as like a payment system.
Yeah.
But what I really, really like, and I need to research more on it, but whenever a token is actually integrated into the smart contract itself, Filecoin. Filecoin is really interesting to me. Although it is a payment to use storage, there's an open marketplace of this token, which means like you don't have to go back and forth to fiat, or there's no reason to use fiat in this. Like the Filecoin, for everyone to know, they're trying to be like Dropbox but decentralized, to where I can give away storage in my laptop, and then you can use it, and then we're using Filecoin to do this. The Filecoin is actually needed, in my opinion, to facilitate that transaction in the most efficient way possible. So I think if the utility token increases the efficiency of a transaction rather than decreasing it, I do think there is purpose in it as well. Ethereum is another great one, where like if Ethereum used fiat instead of Ethereum as Ether as gas, it just doesn't make sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of ones like that really are needed. But just so we're kind of on the same page with like BombX and what we're trying to do, Bomb was a company or a project, a social experiment we launched back in January, and we did that with zero funding, and we learned a lot of things along the way on the friction there. Although I love the model that we've all done here without going the ICO model, there's still a bunch of friction points and downfalls to it. It's not just like I'm just going to go build something and airdrop and it's going to work. We've seen the 99% of companies that tried to do this and failed. So we're trying to, with BombX, is package up everything we learned with Bomb, all the friction points, and then repurpose this for a platform to other people to do. So kind of like Ethereum provided an ecosystem and a platform to launch an ICO, we're trying to create an ecosystem and platform to launch whatever we're calling it here. We're calling it an XIO, like a exclusive incubator offering or a token distribution, whatever you want to call it. We're trying to do that. And there's 4 main points that we've identified as friction points. And maybe I'll ask you guys if you think that these are the correct buckets and add on to these. So the 4 buckets that we've identified are: 1 is going to be the legal aspect of it. So this one's scary for everybody, is like, am I a security or am I not? Am I following legal? So that's like one scare. And like what is the friction point of me actually doing what I want to do? Are you scared of the legal portion of it? 2 is the technical ability. So you actually have to develop it, right? So do you have the developers? Do you have the people that are competent enough to build it? The third one is the marketing and awareness part of it. So yes, we all are saying like there's no reason to overhype something, but you need people to use your project, right? So the whole marketing, awareness, adoption is the third one. And then the fourth one, which I would love to talk about more here, is the liquidity part. And the reason that I think liquidity is so important is you have these exchanges that cost tons of money to get on. So it's like, I don't have the money since I didn't do an ICO to get onto the exchange. How do I get onto an exchange? So the liquidity, how you get onto an exchange. But 2, there's always like these OTC desks for like Bitcoin and Ethereum and stuff like that. But there's no opportunity right now for like low market cap coins, or there's no network to be able to use that. So those 4 points are the friction points we've identified with startups. I want to have an idea. I'm going to create the next Chuck E. Cheese. How do I do it? So legal, liquidity, technical development, and then like community/marketing are the 4 ones. If you guys have any additional ones or want to go into more one of those, I'd love to hear it.
I mean, I can definitely touch in on a bunch of those things because we've been communicating a lot with some legal organizations. We actually have to basically go and get some legal documents filled out to basically say that Hydro is not a security. We already have one from the U.S., but we're communicating with someone and they're like, oh, we need it from Singapore. And I was like, all right, well, there goes like another $5,000-$10,000. And when you're looking at the legal aspect of these things, for all of you guys who are watching, whenever you're going and creating any type of utility token, there has to be zero promise of any type of return on investment. And you can't really market the airdrop being such, because if you do, then it'll be viewed as a security. And if you do that, you'll kind of get yourself into trouble. And obviously, it'll be difficult to get listed on exchanges. And so that's one of the big issues that you will probably face. The one benefit that Hydro, Bomb or BombX, did you rename it to Bomb?
we can go into that in a few, but keep going with your train of thought here, because I'm liking what you're saying.
So like organizations like Hydro, like Uptrend, like BombX, who have actually done an airdrop with basically zero value associated to this currency or utility token, you don't really have like a set amount that you're raising money from, because once you raise money in the eyes of the SEC, and I know the SEC isn't like the law of the entire world in terms of government, but in many cases, a lot of different governments look to the United States for different types of government and regulations. So by doing that, it already puts you in a good aspect because you've never raised money for the token through like a legal offering, which is obviously a massive, massive benefit. And in terms of liquidity and things like that, that is definitely something that we have, I guess, experienced and have issues with, because I'm the main point of contact with a bunch of different exchanges, and they'll always say like, oh, okay, like we'd love to list you. And I was like, oh, great. And then they're like, oh, okay, the cost is going to be 10 BTC. I'm like, oh, okay. In what world?
Yeah, so we're going to pay you 10 BTC so you can scrape trading fees off our community.
And then they'll come back 2 days later. Just kidding, it's 5 BTC. Like, what is that about?
Yeah.
You get that with a lot of like the mid-tier and sort of lower tier exchanges, where they'll basically be like jumping around in terms of price. And then once you get to like the higher tier exchanges where there's actually like a lot of value, they actually start to see a lot of these projects and they're like, wow, like this is really good tech. But the difficulty with a lot of that is it takes a really long time to actually get into their ear, show them some value that's being produced, and show the people that you have in your community. Because in the end, all of these exchanges, they want one thing. One thing.
Trading volume.
They want money. Yeah, and they get all of that through trading volume. And the difficulty with a lot of self-funded projects is not having market making. So for those of you who are listening or watching and don't know what market making is, in the traditional sense, and I'm going to say this outside of the cryptocurrency space because crypto is the wild west and people view market making is basically illegal activities, which in many cases it kind of is. And in the term of market making, it's literally just providing liquidity for people to go and trade, whether it's a stock, a cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin, Ether, Bomb, OneUp, Hydro, etc. And when you look at it in the traditional sense, it's like, okay, that's perfect. Like that's literally what market making is supposed to provide. And then when you look at it in the crypto industry, and I'll get people like in our community always asking, oh, when are you guys going to start doing market making? I'm like, all right, like you can go and do market making. It's not hard. You just have to provide some BTC and like some of your token or coin for liquidity purposes. But everyone in the crypto industry views market making as literally a way to just push the price up, which is obviously extremely illegal because that is market manipulation. It also comes down as an MM. People say market makers is MM and market manipulation. But that's kind of me being weird. But that's one of the biggest issues that I see, especially in this space, really with people who haven't raised any type of funding. And you'll see it on basically every single IEO out there. If you don't know what an IEO is, it's an initial exchange offering. And you're basically going and launching a token offering on an exchange. And what they will do is they will provide market making for those token offerings. And try to pump the price up as much as they can when the token launches, because they've received a massive amount of BTC, Ether, USD, etc., and can basically dictate what the price is of the token or coin when it launches, which is massively illegal. Or I believe it is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's illegal. And that's one of the biggest issues that I see a lot with these organizations that are going and raising funds. So yeah, I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts about that and some of the experiences that you have.
Yeah. I 100% agree with everything that you're saying. And it's almost, it's kind of like a tragedy that it's become an expectation from the crypto community that all these like benchmarks are being met. You know, okay, well, we want you guys to be listed on CoinMarketCap. We want you guys to have massive volume. We want you guys to be on all these massive exchanges. And they're comparing these startup companies to what the ones that they know and they trust. Like, oh, you know, Ethereum's on Binance. Why aren't you on Binance? Like, well, it costs $2 million. CoinMarketCap, you know, you need $10,000 of trading volume and 2 exchanges, and that's going to cost you, you know, on a good day, $20K to get on those 2 exchanges. So it's like it's a very difficult barrier of entry for new projects to meet these benchmarks, and I'd say that's one of the downsides in this kind of like airdrop or from grassroots system, because you know, these big boys with the big money, like, you know, you look at EOS and Voice, and they just, you know, they raise $4 billion in the blink of an eye. You know, they list whoever they want. They do whatever they want. And so just this kind of aura around them of, yeah, they're hitting all these kind of classic benchmarks. It really does feel like money does, and the position just influences people a lot more than it should. And so, yeah, tangent a little bit, but it's a little jading to see how people have this narrow field of vision on, you know, what defines a quality project. Because to me, it feels like the Instagram influencer thing. It's like, you know, all these influencers, they're out there buying likes, buying followers, all this kind of thing. And people know that that's the industry. But you need to have 100K and this many likes or this many followers to be relevant. And I feel it's exactly the same in the crypto space. It's like, we need you to have 100K worth of volume. We don't care if you're doing it with market makers. We just want to see those numbers. Well, look at your Telegram group. We just want to see that you guys have 50,000 members in there. We don't care if 99% of them are fake. Yeah. And these are the numbers that you're going to investors with. And you're like, hey, we have 50,000 engaged community members. You know, we have $100,000 worth of trading volume. It's like, and the investors know too, but everyone's playing this fake game. It feels very much like a Black Mirror-esque episode where everyone has these fake numbers and fake smiles and is just trying to get by. And it's very interesting in a sector like blockchain where we are supposed to have so much transparency, yet I feel that's really falling to the wayside, and these games of big money are really starting to come into play really quickly.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, there's so many misconceptions about. So one, you're exactly right. There's so many vanity metrics, you know, as you can call them, to where you're kind of appearing to be big and you're not at all. Like our Twitter on Bomb Token, if you go to Bomb Token, we have like 5,000, which isn't small, but even when we only had 1,000, we had way more like true engagement, whatever. And then you see some of these Twitter accounts with like 100,000 and like nobody even responds to their tweets. So I think you're exactly right. Is there's this like public persona that people are trying to fake it to make it. That I had such an empowering thought and moment, you know, months ago, that I would love more cryptocurrencies to have, to where you truly control your own destiny. So as long as you are in one exchange, it shouldn't matter. Like, if you can truly drive, if your project is truly good and people truly need your utility or whatever it may be, they will sign up on an account. Yeah, I know that there's more friction, but at the end of the day, the people are trying to, like, getting on a new exchange or whatever it may be, it might drive some extra eyeballs. But if you can have just like one solid thing, like we did with like Mercatalks, was just like, it's probably the worst design I've ever seen in the world. And like, it's, I don't know, I just, not to talk too bad on Mercatalks, but it's like, I would never personally use Mercatalks, but I see that it does what it needs to do. And so we actually got to 1 million like $1 million of like trading volume at one point in time, because people truly cared about the project. So I think if more people felt empowered to, like, instead of feeling like you are a prisoner to the industry, you can still take your own destiny. And as long as you keep building and you keep doing what you want, people will jump through hoops to go along with you.
I'm with you on that. That's an understatement. Man, you I guess put the icing on the cake there.
And that's the thing is, when someone's starting out with a new project, because I agree, someone's going to go to Market Talks. There's going to be $1 million worth of volume on like a project that's like starting to get some wheels behind it, no question. And I think that was right after your guys' coin market cap listing, ironically enough, in this conversation.
It was turned into Google. That's another topic, is coin market cap is just turned into like the Google of cryptocurrency, which is good and bad it's good for awareness, but bad for decentralization. So they have so much power on, if you're not on coin market cap, you're definitely not a legit project in the public's perception,
And there's so many other fantastic options out there for, crypto tracking, like CoinGecko being one of them, which is just far superior in many aspects. But it does have that kind of like old boys Bitcoin club. It's like, for example, we know CoinMarketCap isn't the best. We know Bitcoin doesn't have the fastest transactions and it's not the cheapest, but it's like, it's what we're used to. We know it, we trust it. It has a proven track record. And it kind of on like a macro scale in crypto, it's interesting to see and how much track record is playing into the validity of these projects as opposed to innovation. When crypto is inherently an innovative space, you'd think that, okay, well, this one has faster transactions or this one is, feeless. We'd instantly all move to there because that's just inherently who we are by nature, searching for the next evolution. But it has been quite interesting to see. Yeah, it's like, okay, no, stick with my Binance, stick with my coin market cap, stick with the things that I know with my Bitcoin.
Well, I will say, like, in terms of exchanges and obviously like providing more liquidity, it's definitely a really big boost for marketing for a project. So, like, let's say, for example, you go and you list on a new exchange. It is a good way to get more eyeballs, people reading about what the project is, because you do have some people out there that are obviously very interested in the tech and are just very passionate about these projects and what you are building. But then you also want to have people on the other side of things where they're swing traders or just day traders, different things like that, and they're just going and just trading different types of cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of different angles that you want to have to the market, because if you're just going and obviously building tech, building products, and you're not focusing on all of these different, I guess, pillars of a community-driven project, you're going to have one falling over, and it's not going to be able. The others aren't going to be able to sustain everything. And like that's one of the biggest issues that we've sort of been seeing as of recently, and we're actually pushing to get onto some new exchanges coming up, and I've been doing a lot of sprints with that. And I will say that going and getting that type of exposure, whether it's to that community specifically, because there are some exchanges that have very good geographical exposure to different types of communities and people that you can specifically target. So, for example, if you're going and communicating or interacting with an exchange that is primarily in the US, you're probably going to get a lot of people from the US seeing this project. Or if you want to try and expand into the Indonesian markets, the Singapore markets, different parts of Europe, you can go and target different types of exchanges in those geographical locations, and even check out the types of people that are going to those websites using different types of analytics to basically get an idea of what type of people you can try and attract to your project and the type of people that you want to attract. So those are some of the things that you obviously can do and can benefit from with exchanges. Obviously, some of them are very crooked and are, I will be the first to admit, they're a pain in the ass to communicate and deal with, because they are horrible at communication. But you can get some amount of benefit from them if you're not having to pay $500,000 for a listing. which I hope neither of you guys ever do, but because we're definitely not doing that. But it's a huge pain in the butt to have to deal with that stuff. And
yeah. Jeff, I got a question for you, Jeff, and then maybe to kind of get some engagement, if anybody's in the comments here can also, answer as well. So Jeff, I would like to know, because of the route that you took with this Uptrend, what of the downfalls of not going after capital do you see that, we're talking it's not an easy thing to kind of jumpstart it and do this lean startup approach. So what was kind of the friction points that you've met, and then people in the comments that are live streaming, I'd love to know, for those of you who have not started a cryptocurrency project, why haven't you? What's been your blockage, or what, of those 4 things I talked about, maybe a different one, what has stopped you? So Jeff, if you could answer that, I'd love to hear it.
For sure. Obviously the main thing of not getting funding right out of the gate is not having liquid capital ready to kind of leverage into those positions that people see as making you, a relevant or quality crypto project, those vanity metrics that we were looking at before. When we go into the Uptrend and we make a post, it's like, hey, what would you want to see with Uptrend? How can we evolve to the next stage? And I'll say 25% of the comments are get listed on CoinMarketCap. And it's like, okay, that, if you're looking at it from just a pure play standpoint of cash infusion, let's say 10K per exchange, because you need 2. And then you need the $10,000 volume. So that's a $10,000 to $15,000 market maker plus $25,000 of your own capital in there. So you're looking at $45,000 to get on CoinMarketCap, which in comparison is now twice as expensive as the entire Uptrend build. So it's like this one vanity metric that people care so much about is twice the cost of the project itself. And so I think that's been the biggest hindrance so far. And, slowly moving, as you reach new benchmarks, because it just is bomb, ours has very much been an evolving experiment in testing the waters and saying, okay, what's the response? Should we go further? Yes, it's good. Keep pushing. So, recently we listed on IDEX because we're like, okay, great. The response here is good. The traction is picking up. And so that's been the main friction point, is rather than just being able to blast everything out all at once, we've had to take smaller, more methodical steps. And talking that out loud now isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world.
You get to fix the things that need to be fixed first. And like I said, whenever these companies are building $1 million, they're building something, they don't even know if they're going in the right direction. They're like, all right, we need to go that way, and they spend $1 million on it. I was like, wait, we need to go that way. Keep going in circles, and so I agree with you on there. So I think another misconception on, so for instance, with Bomb and Hydro having these $1 million market caps, that doesn't mean that we have the money to so people if the only way that we could sell to do this is you have to sell directly into
secondary markets.
Into your token, which would just crash the price or the whole ecosystem around you. So I think one of the big misconceptions is whenever they see a 10 or $100 million company that has that many in their tokens, that's what they are operating capital, but it just doesn't work like that. So I really think there's going to be, the only way that this can get resolved is if there's if you don't do an ICO and then you create a market value and a community around your token, kind of the second layer of being able to sell tokens to fund your project, but not doing it through an exchange, I think is going to be one of the only ways I can see projects actually funding themselves without adding just continuous selling of tokens of your native token. That's the only way I can currently see it being feasible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I have a question for you guys, because I'm sort of reading through the comments on the side, and this guy said, I don't know what his name is, it just pops up as Facebook user, and it says, our project has been slow as we have no funding. It's all been out of pocket, and this takes a backseat to things that actually make money. And I know I've been dealing with that a lot, and something that our team deals with very frequently, because we basically propose working with our team and our project as a quote unquote part-time job, where basically most of the team is working a full-time position, and then they work like 30, 40 hours a week on top of that with Hydro, where we have probably a half dozen to a dozen people who literally have just put all of their time and focus into Hydro, me being one of them. So for you guys, how, I just like a question, and for some of these people watching, it might be helpful. What was the biggest takeaway for you guys building out your team and creating this, I guess, ecosystem with people that you can't really say, all right, I'm going to pay you in BTC or Ether or even USD or Euro to basically work with this project full time or even part time to be a part of what we're building? Because you see with all of these projects that raise money, they just pay all their employees full-time salary.
Yeah. Jeff, I would love to answer this first just because I'm really passionate about this. So one thing with Bomb is we've never had any salaries, any reoccurring payments or anything like that. And so like you said before, that can go in two directions. But the one huge benefit of this is the only people that are attracted to and support Bomb and what we're doing, they truly, truly believe in it. So whenever you have a 9-to-5 company where people clock in, clock out, they're going to give you the bare minimum to keep their jobs. And whenever we have with Bomb, truly the only we have 25 moderators right now that work when they want, right? When they want, how they want, whenever they want. And whenever we think they're doing a good job, I'll send them some hey, here's some Bomb, thanks for doing this. But it's never been hey, you do this for this amount of money. And so it's a really, really good screening process for people that are passionate about your company and your project. And it surrounds you. And you've seen this with Uptrend. The people that are there love it more than anything. And so I actually genuinely love this concept. And I think the next point to add is if you can't get people passionate about what you're building to work a little for free or put in sweat equity, or they see the bigger vision, or whatever it is for them, are they doing it for philosophical reasons, they believe in it, are they doing it for a future financial opportunity, or maybe get a more of a full-time job, whatever it may be. If you can't recruit those people to do it, you maybe don't have a good idea, or you're not expressing your vision clear enough. And so this feedback loop is always going back to, am I expressing the vision clearly? Am I recruiting the right people? Are they getting behind it for the right reasons? And so I really do love that. Now with BombX, and just to give clarity, I know that you're asking confusion. Bomb is a deflationary currency. 1% of every transaction is destroyed. BombX is actually a decentralized incubator. And what we're doing is we're actually helping companies. I'd love to talk with Hydra after this actually about, we're actually helping companies and partnering with companies to help them launch their projects and ideas into the world, grow from a marketing perspective, a technological perspective, legal, so on and so forth. So anyways, with BombX, we are more of a traditional company. We're incorporated in Singapore. We're going to go through the more formal route than a social experiment. That being said, because of what we did with Bomb and learning that people are willing to do things because they believe in something and not an immediate financial reward, what we're doing with BombX is we're actually not going to have any employees as well. What we're going to be doing, though, is a campaign-based, almost like a DAO, to where if you have an idea or you want to attribute, sorry, we got to echo. If you want to attribute value to the world or to the ecosystem, you can submit a proposal. I want to be a moderator and I want to do it for 8 hours and I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z. You submit it and our community members will vote to allocate you those funds to do it. So instead of you having a monthly retainer or a job, people will still be able to make tons of money as employees, but they're not going to be a traditional 1099 whatever. It's more going to be okay, I want to add value, and we're instead of telling people our job description, a typical company has a job description of business development director, willing to work 50 hours a week, travel, blah blah blah. What we're actually going to do is you submit your job, your job that you have, a dream job, and we'll say, okay, this does or does not fit into what we're trying to accomplish, and the community votes on it. So it keeps everybody aligned, And the last point I'll make is whenever people tell you what they want to do, rather than you tell them what you need to be done, they're going to work 10 times harder because they love it. So like if I have a guy reach out who's really passionate about branding and I thought I needed him for community management, he can add way more value doing this over there. So yeah, that's my passion for that. I think it aligns everybody.
Yeah, and your passion like shines through in the way you talk. Like it's like that's the ethos behind what you're doing. It's like it's super admirable, and you can see that in this model, people aren't just working for the grind. You know, they're working for the passion for something that they actually believe in. So, like you say, it's a perfect pre-screening to find employees that you're really happy to have on your team. I think that's so cool.
I get probably 3 messages a day that says, "Hey, I want to be a moderator in the group." I'm like, cool. Just introduce yourself, start making friends, and then over time, if we think you're a moderator, we'll make you a moderator. And I say, okay, how much are you going to pay me? I'm like, wait, we have 25 people over here that are just doing it because they enjoy it, and you want to be paid up front. And so it's a really quick way. Somebody will be messaging for 3 hours and then they'll just disappear. And so it's like you said, I'm not against not paying people. That's beyond the point. I probably actually give people more tokens than they would in a traditional community manager position, but it's done out of passion and not out of a time clock.
And Bomb's just been so fortunate, and it's not like, to preface this, it's not unfeasible for people listening to think, they're thinking, oh well, who's going to want to work for free for my project? And I think you nailed it. It's like you just need to hone in on who your audience is, what your messaging is. The comment that Mark read out earlier was from Ken, and he continued his comment saying that it's hard to find volunteers to help to build out the project, especially if your project is in a niche, and that getting the word out is hard as well. And I think having a super intense niche can be a burden, but also a hyper benefit, because then that really targets in who your audience is and your ability to find people who are super passionate and aligned with your vision. Something you mentioned was proposals. And I find that very interesting. And I believe that's what Hydro is doing is as well, and the direction that Uptrend is moving. And so for anyone who's not familiar with how this works, like a proposal can be seen as like a portion of a DAO, like a very small, minute part, decentralized autonomous organization. And so what this would look like is, let's say I want to do some work for Hydro or for Bomb or BombX. I'd say, hey, listen, I want to make it super simple, be a community manager for 1 month, and I want to receive 100 Hydro tokens. And then from there, either it's going to go to the uppers if it's more of like a centralized system, or the community would vote on it if it's a decentralized system. And so essentially people start getting super involved, invested, not only in wanting to contribute and submitting proposals, but also investing or in vetting the proposals. When you run something as a DAO, I feel that, what we've been talking about is like, how do you get the community behind you so that they will trade on an exchange like Mercatox, and you don't have to pay for 1,001 exchange listings. And it's like all about the community and how much zest and gusto that they want to put into your thing. And I find a really great way is to get them involved as much as you can. And I think a phenomenal way is through some form of hybrid or pure play DAO, where they are actually involved in the decisions that are being made in your business. And you can scale it from all the decisions to just, little bounty program proposals where you vet who wins or who gets it and who doesn't. And so to get to Ken's comments, I find if you just put out, like you were saying, Dash, hey, here's what we're looking for, who is interested, or who are you and what do you want to help with? I find it just really, really helps drive not only finding the right people for your project, but also just getting excitement going. The way that we're doing it on Uptrend currently is through something called Vibe Ambassadors. And so similar to yours, Dash, I believe, is when someone's just showing, or I don't think it's actually quite similar, but in our instance, if someone's just showing a lot of gusto on the platform, we reach out to them. We're like, dude, or girl, like, you're phenomenal. We love what you're doing. Would you like to come on as a Vibe Ambassador? And then, we give them some form of payment. And then as they show their colors in the Vibe Ambassador, either they stay there or they move up more into the core team. So we've moved community members up from just an Uptrend community member onto the core team in the span of 4 months, just because we've been so pleased with what they're doing. So getting people involved in any way in your project, I find, is such a big win all around.
Yeah, we when talking about ambassadors, this is kind of a point that it's hard to bring up. Not hard to bring up, but we just haven't responded to this people. So, all right, context, take a step back. We launched a BOM ambassadors program a month ago. And we were pretty much, the premise was like, we don't really know what this group is going to be for yet, other than you're going to be more involved with the project and there will be more opportunities for you to get, like, it was very vague. And so we were just kind of testing the waters to see if it's viable. We had over 200 people from across the world, every country that imaginable, submit this. And it wasn't just like put in your email. It was like paragraph, details. It was like a very hard screen. We had over 200 people. And so we are, for anybody watching that applied to that, we are still, we're very, very close to explaining like what your actual role can be and if invited and who is invited and who's not. But the point being, you're exactly right. This ambassadors program gives people this feeling of inclusion that not that they're better than other people, but it does make them feel a part of a team. And that's always been what it's about.
Yeah. And just to piggyback with a short thing, like I feel purpose is what people are really looking for. And if you can give them purpose, they're just so enthused. Purpose and recognition and gratitude. I think those are the three winning things to be able to build a community.
Yeah, and I can chat with you about potentially how you want to sort of set that up and some things that you can see from like pros and cons with that, because when hydro was basically breaking away from hydrogen about last year, it was basically, some people viewed it as like an ambassador position. Really wasn't, but it was broadcasted as becoming a quote unquote decentralization ambassador, which thank God we got rid of that term, because when you're basically running a company, running a project, and you go to a conference and you're like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, oh, what do you do? What do you do with hydro? I'm like, oh, I'm a decentralization ambassador.
Like, yeah, right. I'm an ICO advisor.
Yeah, cool. And they would be like, all right, like let me talk to like the real team. And I was like, sorry, you're talking to him. And that's something that you want to basically look at and be like, okay, are we going to have these people be like you see it a lot with clothing brands where you basically just give them like free clothing and say like, all right, like I want you to help like quote unquote build the brand, or you want them to be community contributors and things like that, and basically be representatives and helping to basically build the ecosystem, whether it's bringing different types of developers, companies, investors, things like that into the project, rather than just saying, all right, like we want to sort of give you some tokens to just kind of like give the project a good name. And I think that was one of like the biggest, I think, hiccups that I experienced with the whole journey, because I knew like what the position was, and wasn't really to be like an ambassador for hydro. It was a member of the decentralized ecosystem, and it's a very weird term to give to people. So I don't know if that's necessarily the route that BOM is looking to go, or they want them to actually end up being the people governing and running this essentially decentralized project that you guys are basically build.
And this is why we're trying to transition over time from centralization to decentralization, but there might be a time in it where it becomes less efficient and helpful than it is. And so this is something we're exploring, but the big picture, so just to kind of give clarification, BOMX is an incubator. We have a native token called XIO that's going to be on the Binance DEX, or is proposed to be on the Binance DEX. And this token will actually have a voting right in the future to what projects get into the incubator. So if you think of Y Combinator had Airbnb get through, it had Dropbox, it had Uber, all these companies. We're trying to help companies, but is it possible to actually, if you give power to the people to vote who gets in and who gets out, can it succeed? Like, does it need to be, because we're all not, I mean, I hate to say it, we're all not equally smart. We're all not equally, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, but like exactly what you just said, there are pros and cons to a DAO or whatever it may be, but I still am infatuated with the potential of it enough to explore it, you know?
Oh, for sure. And I am a walking example of, or I don't want to say I am, but like our team is a walking example of being able to express different pros and cons of how a DAO can function, because obviously with some forms of centralization, you can get different things done quicker. So
way quicker.
Oh yeah. So if it's like, okay, I want to make a proposal to, I don't know, get funding for this type of project, or to build this product, or to build out this smart contract, different things like that. You basically have to put all of these different types of things through for a vote. And if everyone's like, all right, no, like you need to revise this, and you have to go back to step one, go back and through and revise it, and then go back through the whole process again. Obviously, it does have pros because you get everyone's opinion on it, but it can be very time consuming, and it can be a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's all about structuring. Like, yeah, I think you're exactly right. I want to share one story, and I can't tell you guys the name of the company, but I'll give you enough of an insight to this happened with the top 50 cryptocurrency project. Sorry. So if you go to CMC, one of these top 50 companies, my buddy works in, and he was on the marketing team. And so they are 90% technical team, like 90% of their payroll is on technical, and then 10% is on the marketing team. So they had this like kind of, and it's, by the way, it's like 100 employee company. So it's really big. So anyways, imagine 10 marketing people, and their marketing efforts, they weren't really happy about it. The CEO wasn't happy about it. So they're trying to make proposals for it. They're trying to do this, trying to do that. And so eventually there was a marketing mutiny of sorts, to where they're like, you know, let's get rid of the CMO and let's try to do like a DAO, and let's try to like, we think it'll be more efficient than it is. So they eventually got what they wanted, and through this mutiny, the marketing team was kind of thrown out, and they created a DAO for the marketing. And in the first 3 weeks, nobody made any campaign proposals. So they pretty much got rid of their entire marketing team to make a DAO, and nobody did anything. So I think like exactly what you're saying, it just needs to be structured. The incentives need to be right. The timing needs to be right. You can't just throw out a DAO and think it's going to work. You know?
Yeah. And you know, there's always these two sides of the spectrum. You know, you have full blown DAO and full blown centralization. And I don't think necessarily the sweet spot is ever on either end of the spectrum. You know, if you look at full centralization where one guy is making all the decisions, it doesn't work. You know, you need to delegate decisions to, you know, say your COO or your marketing head. So there is like some form of decentralization, even on like the far end of the centralized spectrum. And I think these hybrid models are going to be the ones that really come into place, so that you can at least have speed and still get the community involved on a wide scale and have this active feeling, and like it's just a lot of juice going to it.
Agreed.
I'm with you on that.
So if like seeing, because Hydro is kind of built out as like very large scale, probably one of the, I'd say, because you know, you have like DAO Stack or Aragon, they're these like DAO platforms, but they don't really have much execution yet. I'd say Hydro is one of the projects that has implemented this style, I'd say the most successfully in the entire space. You know, looking back, what would you say, you know, you would change or you would implement, or are there things that you see right now where you're like, we don't have this thing quite figured out, but for us to be able to, you know, grow community or execute effectively? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there are different things that you can do within a DAO that can be beneficial, and some are things that you don't necessarily need. Obviously, one of the big factors for how a DAO functions is voting. And we were actually working with an organization called Horizon State to basically do different types of on-chain voting, and basically posting all of those things on the blockchain. And one of the, I think, misconceptions that people have, especially with blockchain, is that not necessarily everything does need to be put onto the blockchain. And a lot of the different things that you're doing and you're voting on, you don't really need to have them be placed on the blockchain. You can just go onto Polly.ai and just create an in-group poll and say, all right, what are the different things that you want to do? Like, you have all of these different options. Do you agree? Yes, no? Do you have a different idea? And basically put it out there. I think when you're doing different types of voting, sometimes when it's like a very, very important vote and you're going and voting on governance structure, going and voting on who you want to be put into different positions. So for example, we actually just had our second round of voting within our team. So people would go and apply for different positions. So after every 6 months, everyone on the team, quote unquote, loses their position.
Mm-hmm.
Has a title. And everyone goes through this vote and goes through and applies for all of these different positions. And you put in an application and all of these different types of things. So I actually applied for general operations manager as well as the biz dev lead. Unfortunately, I didn't get the gen ops position. I'm actually very happy with the guy who ended up getting it. It's Marco Pays, and he's actually down in West Palm Beach. I was really happy that he actually ended up getting it. I would have liked to, but it was basically between him and myself. And I ended up becoming the business development. And the last 6 months, we had a different person in that position, not biz dev, but basically the gen ops position. It was our Kodra. And we had it as the term as president, but we changed it to general operations manager. And basically, at the end of 6 months, all of the people within our entire core team loses their title. So everyone has the same opportunity to get these different types of positions, which I think is a really, really powerful thing to offer to basically anyone to be a part of it. Because we don't have a CEO, we don't have a CTO, we don't have a CFO, we don't have any of those executive roles. We have somewhat of a hierarchy because we do have different types of leads who basically manage all of these different departments, like myself. But you want to have some form of true decentralization within some of these types of organizations, because us specifically, we're working as a team that's spread all over the entire globe. And especially in the tech industry and in blockchain specifically, you're not going to have very frequently a team that's all working in the same office. Everyone's basically working remotely, sort of like where I'm at my desk right now, where Dash is or where Jeff is. They're just going to be cranking away on their computers and communicating with people on Slack or Telegram. And I think that's a really cool way to be able to run an organization, run a business, because that way you don't have the issue with people who are like, all right, like this guy is just in it for himself. He has way too much power. I don't like how he's running things. And then the team can basically go and vote and have someone new come into place and basically run the project, see how that goes for 6 months, and then the process goes over again. I think it's a really cool way of doing it.
And I'd agree. That feels like a really nice hybrid, where people are voting consistently on, okay, who are we essentially re-electing into these positions? And you're not losing any speed or efficiency, but you're just finding the best guy for the job each and every time. And, those jobs can be pretty high level, like business development, but I'm sure they can get a lot more granular than that too. And votes don't have to happen every 6 months, but votes can happen, say every 2 weeks for some of these granular positions. So, and I find that's a really great idea.
And it keeps the person doing it on top of their game too.
Exactly. Yeah. And
chair, and they're gonna all right, seniority here doesn't own.
Yeah, because I was talking to Marco, and I was really happy that he got the position. And I sent him a message. I was like, oh, hey, congrats, man. I'm happy that you got it. And I was like, just know I'll be on your heels.
Yeah.
Better not slack off. And that's definitely a really cool way to do it, because it makes sure that everyone is basically doing their job.
So is your voting, it's done with the token, right?
No.
Oh, it's not. How do you vote?
So right now we're actually looking to move toward having some form of community voting for different types of things, because you have to be very, very careful with how you're doing voting especially when it's with a token, because it can be viewed as a security. Because when you're going and voting with a token, it can be seen that it is a security, because when you're voting like
board seats.
Yes. So when you're voting as a stock, so every time you have a stock in a company, you have some type of voting share in the company, whether it's on a call or different types of things that are going on within the business. And when you're doing that with a utility token, it can be viewed in different types of legal issues that can be seen as a security. And we've had that discussion a bunch of different times, like, oh, if you're a certain token holder, you can vote, or if you have in Hydro, if you have one Hydro, you can vote on different things. But by doing that, it basically gives some form of voting power with the token. So it kind of makes it into a security. So one of the things that we're going to be looking to implement is a way for people within the community to vote, where they basically just go and complete KYC, because all the people within our team are KYC approved, as you can probably tell. And we want to have the people within the community to be able to vote without having different types of bots, or basically trying to go and run the project into the ground, because you can see that with a lot of different organizations. If they have a foul feeling about the project, they can just go and create a whole bunch of different types of fake accounts. So this initiative that we actually brought up, we're going to be enabling different types of community members to be a part of voting in different forms and fashions, and we're going to have them sign an NDA and complete KYC, so we don't have duplicate people, and enable them to have a better idea of different types of voting that goes on within the organization and with the community, because we all have the goal to drive the community to success and want to have more, I guess, impact from the community's opinion and aspect on that.
Mm-hmm. And so how are you guys working with voting power, for example? Because obviously, if you look at a 1-to-1 model, one community member vote equals one hydrogen team member vote, that to me seems on one side fair, but also on the other side doesn't make any sense, just because of the knowledge and expertise that somebody brings should inherently have more weight. How do you guys play and factor that in?
So we haven't really released a lot of the details yet. We're kind of figuring out how we want to structure it, because right now within the DAO of the actual team, everyone just has one equal vote for every single different thing.
Right.
When we involve the community, we're kind of exploring how we want that to function, whether it's a team member has 2 votes or 1.5 votes for everything, different things like that. I don't know offhand. I also haven't been the lead for building that out. That's actually been one of our community managers, basically the guy who is leading the PRCM side of our team. He's been basically building that out, and I'm actually really excited to see that proposal to really bridge the community, guiding this project where we all want it to go.
Mm-hmm. It's always so interesting to get on the chats with you guys, because I feel that the conversations lean to governance quite a bit. It's just such an interesting topic, and just this massive rabbit hole. Dash, I feel like you got some things cooking in your brain. What do you got? What do you got on the cooker right now?
No, you actually fried my brain. I got my. I usually do these sprints of passion where it's just here's what's going through my brain. But
right.
Yeah, just to maybe give some excitement on about this whole conversation and how you made starting a multi-million-dollar business without funding.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what we plan to do over the next few years and decades with XIO. And so if anybody is in the comments or whatever, and they either have an idea about something, or you're an existing project and you need help with marketing, legal, technical, or what's the fourth one? Something
liquidity.
Liquidity. Yeah, one of those four.
I was paying attention.
Yeah, there you go. Taking notes. If you need help with one of those four, I'd be happy to. bombx.io is the website. But that's all I have. And I think we've kept some good attention of people. This is impressive. For an hour and 15 minutes, we still got 18 people here. So I think it's a good amount of time.
Yeah, right on. I agree. All right, guys, thanks so much for hopping on the chat. It's always fun.
Can I ask one quick question before?
Yeah, of course.
So I guess we've been talking about Uptrend, Hydro, and BombX. Before we get wrapped up, what are some of the developments that you're looking forward to within the project or within the team, I guess, over the next couple weeks or months for those of you who are still listening?
On the Uptrend side, we're taking a book out of the old Zach-Bomb playbook here. And we're moving to a deflationary currency because, as we were talking earlier in this stream, what is the inherent value of tokens? And you look at the Steemit blockchain or Steemit social platform and its inflationary value and how it's just really dropping and things are just not moving smoothly. And so we're going to start exploring a deflationary currency. Actually, within the next 24 hours, we're going to be burning 90% of our tokens. And then within the next 2 weeks or so, we're going to be releasing what that deflationary aspect of Uptrend actually looks like and how that deflationary aspect actually transitions into a decentralized autonomous organization and allowing people to submit proposals. So a percentage of the tokens from certain actions we're going to be burning, and a percentage of those tokens we're going to be submitting into a community growth fund. So that'll be essentially where the team salary comes from. That'll be from where people can earn money from the community for doing certain tasks. This will be kind of like the bread and butter. And then other than that, we're always got so much stuff in the works, but those are the two really main things that I say are exciting in the pipeline.
Yeah, that's exciting, Jeff, just because it's so, I think you did it kind of like Parachute did it, where you were like exploring with your token and then you got more granular on what we actually wanted to do. So like blockchain is good and bad because you can not really go backwards a lot of times.
Oh my God, yeah. Which you've learned on your token a couple times, and so have I.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah, in the early days, we made some changes and had to do swap whatever. But I love that you guys are honing in on what works, and you're doing instead of all like the copycats of Bomb, you're doing what I hope people would do. It's like you're taking the idea of deflation and integrating it into your own system for your own solution and your own needs, rather than just creating another deflationary currency. So I really think a lot of people will start to integrate into some way, and of course not at a 1% ratio or whatever like we're doing, but something along those lines. That's great to hear. For us, so we made an announcement 2 weeks ago about BombX, and we're going to be joining Binance Chain. And so we're very, very confident our token XIO is going to be on Binance DEX, which is really exciting news. So there's going to be a snap. And so how we're distributing it, kind of meta to this whole conversation, again, we're doing it without an ICO. So what we're doing is everybody who owns BOM token on September 1st, we're having a snapshot. And according to how many BOM tokens you have, you will get 25 XIO tokens. And so the snapshot will be taken. We will actually airdrop people their XIO tokens. They can then send those to Binance DEX and immediately start playing with them. So our focus on the next few months is that whole distribution process, which is going to be really fun. We're building people into we call it the BombX initiative. So we have a lot of companies like Uptrend, CCI, or CI, CoinGecko's in it, Ethos is in it, a few development companies, Coinbound.io, InnoWire. All these companies are coming together pretty much to say we support BombX and its goal to launch ideas into the world. So if you are a company out there, even if you don't have a token, we would love to connect with you on there. And then the third thing is we need to recruit talented projects. So we have about 3 or 4 projects that are in our pipeline that we're going to potentially launch with, that we're in discussions with right now. And so we just want to get the highest quality projects to come through the incubator. Our goal is to launch 1 new company every month, starting in October, November area. So that's kind of what we're working on.
Cool. So I guess that kind of leads to me. So we got some really exciting stuff coming up for Hydra. We actually made an announcement earlier today that we are building in Hydro X, which is our remittance app, into Hydro Pay. So yeah, maybe we stole the name from you guys. No, I don't. So HydroX is basically a remittance app that enables for different types of fiat to fiat remittance or crypto to fiat remittance. And we have a payment application called HydroPay, which is the first permissionless, gasless P2P payment application. And some of the things that we have coming up over the coming months, we are obviously going to be weeks and months, we're going to actually be releasing HydroX and building that obviously into HydroPay. We have an MSB partner that we are going to be announcing, so we can do those different types of fiat conversions, both within the HydroPay app and I guess now the HydroPay or HydroX app. We are going to be releasing our security tokenization smart contract. We have a solutions team that we're going to be releasing, sort of similar to what Dash is doing with XIO. So basically going and building out different types of products and solutions or pilots for different companies, people in general. We also have an IPFS node that we are going to be releasing, which enables for different types of file management systems for like creating, encrypting, stamping files, and all these different types of things. And that's what we have coming up for the most part. I'm probably missing some stuff, so don't blame me for forgetting. But pretty excited about what's coming up with Hydro. I know that BombX and Uptrend are basically, we're all moving in the right direction for success. And I'm really stoked to see what happens over the next coming weeks, months, and hopefully years.
Yeah. 3 projects that went no ICO route. You know, we're all plugging along. We got some full pipelines, all 3 of us. So for everyone who's listening, it can easily, well, not easily, with work and dedication be done. Yeah. This is very much a viable route. And, you know, definitely, as Dash was saying, Lincoln with himself, BombX is a perfect spot for you to at least start fielding ideas. You know, whether you get accepted to the incubator or not, you know, you're going to be able to pull a lot of additional value on like, okay, well, what steps would you need to take? I'm sure to be able to get there. So again, if you guys have a business idea in mind, you're experiencing some friction points, I feel the 3 of us are, you know, very open to these kinds of questions. This is an area we're all passionate about. So don't hesitate to reach out. And so for everyone watching on the stream, have an awesome rest of your day and check you guys next time.
Later.
See, oh, I stole the same thing from you, Dash.
Uh-oh.
How you doing?
Gotta do left hand.